Hey, it is Joy Presley here, also known as Gluten Free Joy. Today I am going to be making pie crust. Tomorrow is Christmas, and I'm sorry that this video came a little late because I know there have been people who have been wanting a pie crust recipe, and here I am finally making this video the day before Christmas. But I wanted to go ahead and show you how to make this. Hopefully this video won't be too long and it won't take up much of your time because it really is a quick, easy recipe. So what I have here is I have 2 cups of all-purpose gluten-free flour. You can use whatever brand you like. I have Crisco because I believe that pie crust should be made with Crisco. It's kind of like cornbread. I believe that cornbread should be made in a cast iron pan, and if you can't make cornbread in a cast iron pan, then you shouldn't make it at all. It is just disrespectful to the cornbread. I have 1 egg, and I also have about 2/3 of a cup of water. I have salt, and I have my pastry blender. So that's what you're going to need right off. You want to make sure that you also have some cornstarch or other gluten-free flour for dusting purposes. And what is helpful is a pastry mat, which I'll show you mine later. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and put the 2 cups of flour into my bowl here. And then I'm actually going to take my water here and I'm going to transfer it into here because I actually need this for something else, for my Crisco. So I'm going to put this here so I don't wet my entire counter. And I'm going to measure out about 1/2 cup of Crisco with my handy dandy rubber spatula. I love this thing. Now, I live in a really small city, so if I forget pie crust at the store, I don't have the option of running to the store down the street to get pie crust. I think the closest store to me that sells gluten-free pie crust is probably about 40 to 50, nope, probably closer to 60 miles away from me, 57, 60 miles away from me. And so you could imagine that I don't want to run out. It's not a quick trip to go get pie crust. So, and yes, I do use store-bought gluten-free pie crust sometimes when I don't want to make it. Alright, I'm just going to finish measuring that in here. And if you're wondering where I got this really cool measuring cup, this is actually a Pampered Chef measuring cup that measures liquids and solids, and it is absolutely awesome. I love it. I've had it for about 6 years now, and I use it all the time. So you can get one of these from your Pampered Chef representatives because we all know one. If you're in Manning and you need a Pampered Chef consultant, I'm pretty sure that Paige, I think her last name is Conant. Paige, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if I messed your last name up, but I'm very sure that she would be glad to help you get one of these cool things here and much, much more. Alright, so I got about 1/2 cup of Crisco here. You can use butter if you want. Like I said, I just believe that not using Crisco for pie crust is disrespectful to the pie crust. You know, you eat worse things than Crisco when you get a burger from a fast food restaurant, or any food from a fast food restaurant for that matter. Alright, so I have that in there. I'm going to just stick that right on top of here and move this out of my way. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because I want to show you what's going on in my bowl so you can see what kind of consistency this dough should have. Alright, so I have my flour and I have my Crisco here, and now I'm going to use my pastry blender, and I'm just going to mix this in here, and I'm going to have to use my spatula here to every now and then scrape it off of here. So that's what I'm going to do now. So keep that rubber spatula close by because you're going to still need it. And this process here can take a little while. I mean, it's not extremely long, but it's definitely one of those things that this is typically the process that makes me say, ah, I think I'll just buy a pie crust. But this, I've tried a couple of different recipes, and this is probably the closest to a regular pie crust that I've tasted, and it's actually really, really, really good. I haven't found anybody yet who could tell the difference between this recipe and the regular wheat-filled recipe. All right, so for the most part, we have that incorporated. I'm just gonna clean that off and mix a little bit longer. All right, so if you can tell here, this is kind of like a crumbly texture, and that's what you want to see once you get your oil mixed in. You cannot use a liquid oil for this recipe. It's not going to work. I've also made this pie crust using the what's that, Smart Balance and Earth Balance, which is vegan butter. Now, yes, I'm going to add my salt now. And honestly, that's because I forgot about it before. But this is about a half a teaspoon of salt here, and that's going to go in. And then I'm going to put a tablespoon of sugar, and I'm going to have one of my boys pass me my sugar because I didn't grab that. So pass me the sugar, please. And I'm going to mix that in while I'm waiting for him to pass me the sugar. And then we're going to, all right, give it to me, thank you. All right. So I'm going to put a tablespoon of sugar in here. You can put 2 teaspoons of sugar. I like mine on the sweeter side, especially since this pie crust is going to be used for sweet potato pie and pecan pie, or pecan. I'm a Yankee, so I pecan. You can argue over it later. It doesn't matter to me. All right, so I have that mixed in, and now I'm going to put in my egg. So I'm going to crack my egg, and that's going to go in. All right, and I'm going to mix that in. And I want to make sure that I get that mixed all the way through as much as I can. And it's still crumbly. And now I'm going to add in my water, and that's my 2/3 cup of water. But I want to add it in a little bit at a time. I don't want to just dump it in there, because then I'll end up, sometimes you can end up with a dough that's way too wet and you won't be able to work with it, and that's not what we want, especially here. I think we're going to be okay with this. All right, and you should be starting to see the dough form at this point. And this will be a dough that you can work with your hands. I know a lot of gluten-free doughs they're really wet, and you know, they don't really resemble regular dough. Even if you can get a product that's similar to one with wheat, it can be really tricky on knowing how much liquid to add to the recipes. So I'm going to just use my pastry blender here to get some of that off of there. There's no need to mess up more dishes for that when I have a perfectly good pastry blender here. All right, and I'm just going to keep mixing until everything is really mixed well. And if you can see, it's starting to look like dough. I could make a really cheesy joke right about now, but my kids probably won't laugh because I'm not really that funny. They would probably think it was a corny joke. So I'll just keep it to myself. But just know that I have a dough joke. For real dough. Alright. You should see the pain on my children's faces. Alright, so there I have it mixed up right. And it's all of the flour is pretty much mixed in, and I don't have any dry spots. So now I'm going to turn it out onto my pastry mat, which I'll bring over in just a second. Let me make sure I get my doughy goodness, because I want all of that. I want as much of it as I absolutely can get. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to bring my pastry mat. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way because I can see the letters clearer. And I'm just going to get a paper towel to wipe off my dough that I already decided to stick to it. Alright, so what I want to do here is I want to take a little bit of cornstarch. Here, I want to take a little bit of cornstarch and I'm going to sprinkle it on there. Just like that, so that I can work with this easier. Normally I would use parchment paper, but today I'm just going to use cornstarch. Alright, so now I'm going to just plop my dough on there with some little rubber spatula. Let's see, maybe it's better to do it this way. So, plop my dough here. And now I'm going to try to get my hands in that, kind of like a little kid there, playing in dirt or whatever. And I'm going to pick up all of my pieces here, and I want to make this into a ball. Okay, and once I make that into a ball, get back in there. I want all of my dough. All right, now let me shape that a little bit more. Spread that out. Okay, so all right, so now I have my ball here, and I'm going to take my rubber spatula and I'm going to divide it in half, pretty much. Okay, that's, I'm going to put a little bit more over there. Alright, so now I end up with 2 balls of dough. Now this recipe makes 2, I think 9-inch pie crust. Is about 9 inches, and I'm just going to roll that into a ball here, and I'm going to move it over, and we'll work with that later. Alright, so now I'm going to work with this one here, and I want to roll it into a ball as much as I can. See, pieces are trying to escape. I'm going to roll that into a ball. Like I said, you see I'm working with this. You should be able to work with this dough here. So I have a ball there, and I like to just go ahead and flatten it out. I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it out. And because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, I want to... Alright, so there. So now I'm going to take my rolling pin here. I'll put a little bit of cornstarch on that too. And I'll tell you right now is that this is not one of those recipes where I'm going to sit here and tell you, oh, you'll get this perfect dough that won't ever stick, because there's a good chance that this dough may stick to whatever surface that you're using. But my take with dough is that it's dough. If it sticks and tears apart, press it back together. You know, it's dough. Okay, like this is coming apart. I'm just gonna push it back together. All right. And I want to roll this out as much as I can to about a 9-inch pie, which is this line here that I'm covering up with cornstarch. All right. And yes, I flip my dough occasionally because I'm just me, I guess. So you just want to roll it out in every direction until you get about a 9-inch pie crust. And typically I stop a little before 9 because I found that when I roll out my pie crust exactly to 9 that they're way too big for my pan. So I'm just using my rubber spatula to get underneath here and at the same time kind of push cornstarch, because after a while it does start to stick. And like I said, I'm not going to sit here and promise you that this dough is not going to tear apart, but it's dough. Press it back together. Alright. And you can just see that I'm just working this here. Now I may very well attempt to slide this on a piece of parchment paper, because life's much easier when you have parchment paper. And I bought these pie pans here from Walmart. They're like 88 cents and they come in a 2-pack, and even though I have a glass pan, I like these. They're disposable. I don't have to wash it later. Alright, so instead of trying to put this onto parchment paper, I'm just going to roll my dough onto my rolling pin here. Again, you may find that this tears. It's okay. It's perfectly fine. Press it back together. Sometimes it surprises you and it doesn't. Rock on. Alright, so I'm going to lay this in here, you know, just like you would any regular dough. Just lay it and you can adjust it after you get it on there. And this is why I say I typically stop well before 9 inches, because it usually is way bigger. So I'm going to work with this a little bit and actually just going to start to press that in, and I'll cut off the excess. And this piece over here, like I said, it's uneven. I'm just going to press it down. Alright, now these edges here, and I'll turn it so you can see, where I have this edge that's cracking a little, I'm going to push that back together. Good as new. Alright, and any edge that I have that's that looks like it wants to divide, I'm going to just press it back together. And I'd assume that that's what anybody would do with regular pie crust. Alright, so if you'll hand me a butter knife and a fork. So that's why I like my handy dandy rubber spatula. Alright, so now I'm going to start cutting off these edges, and I'm going to fill in where I want more pie crust, and I'm going to make this pretty now, because again, I told y'all that I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and we're going to do it right or we're not going to do it at all. So everywhere that it's not pretty, we're going to make it pretty, because we're serving this for Christmas and people are going to think that we're slack if we don't. I don't care what they think, honestly. So again, I'm just pressing here, making it pretty. Now on this spot here where it's not quite enough, I'm going to take the pieces that I pulled off and I'm going to press them on there until it looks the way that I want it to look. Easy. Same goes for here. And my goal is just that it comes to the edge. I'm not that person who does fancy pie edges. I get about as fancy as fork marks. That's what we're going to do today because that's what I do. If you're one of those people who have to have the really crinkly edges, rock on, do your thing. I'm just not that person. I'm showing you how to make the pie crust and you can make it your own. Do whatever you like. Alright, and make sure that when you're pushing it together, that you push it together well. You don't want to leave cracks in it because then that kind of defeats the purpose. It's going to crack off, break off anyway. There we go. A little bit more and we're almost done. I have to thank my children for their patience with me because they are my camera crew today. And I'm so very grateful, especially for my older son who is operating the camera. Y'all shout out to my son Xavier. Whoop whoop. He's doing fist pumps, raising the roof back there. You're doing an awesome job. All right. And I'm going to fill in this last spot right here. That's too much. Alright, so now that we have a fairly decent crust here, I'm just going to make sure the edges are good and pull that back from the edges so that it doesn't bake onto the rim, the rim underneath, and then I won't be able to get my pie out in one piece and I'll be angry because it won't be pretty. So I'm just kind of moving it away from the edges a little. If you've stuck with me so far, I appreciate you. Alright, so there we have it, and now I'm going to put my fork marks in there for those people who like to be fancy. Here's my fancy right here. And there you have it.